It's part of the whole creation seminar, and um, it's the title of part of the package is Outlook, the Big Picture. So let's just say a word of prayer, and we can get on into it. Gracious God, we thank you for the ability to just spend a little time together learning um, about something that can be very helpful to all of us. Pray, oh God, that what is for us is indeed for us, and that those things will be highlighted in our individual minds and hearts, and that we will each be able to walk away from here having learned and gained something. We pray these things in your name. Amen. All right. So Outlook, the big picture. Outlook refers to how we approach the world and our lives. Our outlook impacts everything we think and do. And the broad terms for outlook, you can kind of just break it down into two different categories, right? Some people tend to be optimistic, while others tend to be pessimistic. If you were to kind of break down the world into two groups, we'd pretty much fall into one of these two things. Of course, everybody's not 100% one thing, right? We tend to lean one way or the other. So it could be probably more properly said that we either lean more optimistic or we lean more pessimistic. Sometimes there are things that we're just more optimistic about, whether that's because we've had positive experiences with this particular situation or thing many times before, or we are very gifted in this particular area. So we're quite optimistic when it comes to those situations. Or sometimes, because we are less familiar, we can be a bit pessimistic because we're unsure. But generally speaking, the bent of your life, the bent of your thinking, does it lean to more optimism or does it lean to more pessimism? So there are some benefits to, or some drawbacks to having one of those two outlooks on life, right? So with a positive outlook, you will have a merry heart. Right? You ever been around, optimistic people who just, they focus a lot on the good things. They focus a lot on the positive things, right? Those people tend to be people that you really want to be around, right? You kind of think to yourself, oh man, that person's always so happy, or that person's always so pleasant, to be around, or oh, that person, man, I love talking with them, or oh man, I love being around them because every time I'm around them, I feel uplifted, I feel refreshed, because they've always got positive things to say. They've always got an optimistic outlook that they want to share with you, and that tends to make your heart feel good, right? You as the recipient and you as the person who has this optimistic mindset, you have a happy heart, you have a merry heart. And it reminds me of that verse in Proverbs that says, a merry heart does good like medicine, right? Kind of thinking about, for instance, those who suffer with depression, and you've got to take antidepressants. But if, for folks who suffer with that, a lot of times, if they're in therapy, they do cognitive therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. And one of the things that they'll do with their therapist is they'll learn how to counteract those negative thoughts, those pessimistic thoughts, and start to replace them with those optimistic, those more positive thoughts. And so it works almost as good, in some cases, in some studies, even better than the antidepressants. To really focus on optimism and they get this, as the Bible would say, a merry heart, and it really does good like medicine. A positive outlook will also help to multiply your talents. I kind of think of, with this statement, I kind of think of DIYers, right? Do-it-yourselfers. And folks who say, hey, they say to themselves, hey, I think I can do that. I think I'll be good at that. I want to try that out. It's because they have this optimistic mindset, right? They believe that they will be able to do this task. They're interested in this task. And so they're willing to, take that step out. They're willing to try new things. And in trying new things, you gain new skills, right? And so you'll be able to multiply your talents that way. If you start with the mindset that, that looks too hard, that kind of looks boring, I don't really want to try that, you limit yourself, right? And we're having that more pessimistic mindset, you kind of end up not growing at all. You don't stretch, you don't try new things, and so you're not really going to multiply your talents. You're kind of like, going back to the Bible again, that servant that received the one talent, and he had a pessimistic mindset, right? He said, the master's a hard master. He's very stingy. What? I'm just going to bury this talent and put it in the dirt, and so that when he comes back to collect it, he'll have his talent back. Very pessimistic mindset. But those who had the optimistic mindset, the positive mindset, right? What did they do? They were able to develop the talents, and they got even more, right? So that positive outlook will help you to multiply your talents. And we just spoke about earlier about being able to gain friends. When you have a positive mindset, positive outlook, you're always thinking good things, looking for the good in others, looking for the good in situations. People want to be around you. People start to flock around you. They like being in your presence. And so these are just, and there's many more things I'm sure we could say about what having a positive outlook will do for you. But these are just three things that I wanted to highlight from the packet. All right, now without a positive outlook, your physical strength and health might not endure. So there's some studies that really, really highlight this, right? So for example, I remember reading a book on positive psychology, and one of the things that it studied was affirmations, right? These are things that are either positive or negative self-talk. And the author wanted to make a case that our positive and negative self-talk can have an impact on us down to even our cellular level. And one of the experiments that he pointed to was a simple experiment of having rice, uncooked rice, in a clear canister, right? And so what the experimenters did was, with one canister, they just let it sit, didn't do anything, let it sit for a few weeks. And the other canister, what they did was every day, about 3 times a day, they would walk by that canister and they would speak to the rice. It sounds silly, but this is what they did. They would speak to the rice in that canister, and they would yell negative things at it, just negative things for about 30 seconds straight. And they would do that 3 times a day. What they found was, in about 2 weeks, and this was white rice, that white rice just started to get brown and dirty and nasty, while the other one in the canister that just, wasn't said anything to it, it was just left alone, it stayed white. It didn't spoil or anything. So they don't know what the causation or the link is, but, and this experiment has been repeated many times, and it's pretty consistent. The rice that got these negative affirmations, these negative things said to it, for whatever reason, it actually started to decay and turn bad. Oh, yeah, with a lid on. So just really interesting. And there's other studies that show that, if you sing to your plants, if you talk nicely to your plants, if you say positive things to your plants, it actually helps them to grow. As strange as this seems, they can't figure out like the molecular and the detailed science about it, but there's very strong correlation that these positive versus negative, things being said, it affects, living organisms on a cellular level, how much less, us, or how much more us as human beings. So you're really, with that negative self-talk or that negative outlook, you are actually, damaging your body on a certain level. Another study that was pointed out was with heart patients, patients who had undergone cardiac surgery. And so they followed these patients for about 10 years. And they showed that the patients who had a pessimistic mindset versus those who had an optimistic mindset, the pessimistic ones lived half as long after the cardiac surgery. So once again, showing that this negative or lack of positive outlook or mindset actually will impact you on a health level. So your physical strength and health might not endure. Your genius might sit idle. Once again, speaking about how, if you have a pessimistic mindset, you're not willing to try things, right? So you may be massively talented. God may have endowed you with amazing gifts. But because you're thinking, nobody's going to care, I'm too frightened, every time I try something, I always fail, and you kind of talk yourself out of even trying, these amazing gifts that God has given you, it just sits there. It just sits there and it doesn't get shared with the world, so your genius might sit idle. And then you might not be a blessing to those around you. If anything, you might end up bringing people down, right? That saying, misery loves company. And so, somebody comes to you and they're laying out their problems and their trials and tribulations, and you kind of just go along and you say, man, you're so right. The world is messed up, and you'll never get out of that situation, and it just feeds into that, right? And so you, instead of maybe encouraging that person and being a blessing to that person, you end up being a discourager and not being a blessing at all. All right, so just want you to look at this run-on word right here. And I want you to shout out, what do you see? All right, a lot of people have said opportunity is nowhere. Does anybody else see something else? Opportunity is now here. That's a perfect highlight, right, of the difference between the optimistic mindset and the pessimistic mindset, right? With the pessimistic mindset, you'll see opportunity is nowhere, right? Same letters, right? Same letters that comprise this run-on word. This is my term, run-on word. But with a positive mindset, you see opportunity is now here, right? So it's all about your mindset. It's all about your outlook. A lot of times I've heard, a calamity is just an opportunity waiting in plain sight. How many, think about the pandemic, right? How many of you were, using virtual technology to do work or to, really view church or get involved in spiritual things before the pandemic? All right, just a couple people, right? But once the pandemic hit, these technologies exploded, right? And so now for a lot of us, doing work over Zoom, I heard our speaker mention a Zoom call that she was on recently. For work, I use WebEx, and we do all our staff meetings on WebEx. I can even do staff meetings from home. That has exploded. That was an opportunity for these technology companies. A horrible situation with COVID-19 and the pandemic, but it was a great boost for these technological companies. Their stocks went up. Some of them became billionaires. But you have to have that positive mindset of, okay, yes, this is a bad situation. What are the problems? Oh, these are the problems? Well, hey, this is how we can impact that in a positive way. And so virtual learning, virtual meetings, virtual church, virtual prayer meetings, all of that shot up. And who benefited greatly? Zoom, WebEx, Facebook, Instagram, a lot of these technology, TikTok, a lot of these technology companies. So, for a lot of us, we saw, oh, man, pandemic opportunity is nowhere. But for other people with a more positive mindset, oh, opportunity is now here. So some of the takeaways that I'd like for us to have after kind of just going over the generalities of a positive mindset, optimistic mindset versus a negative mindset or pessimistic mindset. First way is you got to hope and believe in the best, right? So come what may, regardless of what situation you find yourself in, you got to hope and believe that the best is yet to come, right? Or the best is just right around the corner. Going back to that book that I mentioned about positive psychology. Positive psychology is a branch of psychology that focuses on good virtues. So instead of focusing on abnormalities or problems, it focuses on, well, what are you doing positively? Or what are the positive traits that you have already? And let's focus in on that and help you strengthen that. And so in this particular book, he shares about hope and why hope is important and how hope can really help us to endure. And so he does a simple experiment, a simple challenge with his daughter. And so the challenge is, who can hold on to cold ice for the longest? They put an ice cube in their hands, and the first one to let go is the loser, right? And so he said his daughter beats him every single time. And so one day he asked her, what's your secret? Like, how are you always able to beat me? And she said to him, well, I know the cold isn't going to last forever, right? It's going to hurt. It's not going to be comfortable. But at some point, I'm going to be able to drop this. So I take my mind and I start imagining other things, or start thinking about other things, or I start counting in my head. And so this is the thing I think that sometimes people kind of get twisted a little bit, that an optimist is somebody who's kind of like pie in the sky, head in the clouds. They're completely ignoring the realities of life. No, that is not the case. An optimist, a true optimist, is one who takes a real hard look at life, is able to truly see what the situation is. They're not ignoring anything. But what they do is they believe that, and they hope for the best, that the best is around the corner, that the best is yet to come, that this is not going to last forever. This is just a temporary situation. So for her, the cold is she recognizes it, right? Yes, it is cold. Yes, it does hurt. She's not ignoring it. She's not lying and saying, no, it doesn't hurt. No, this is perfectly comfortable. It feels like holding cotton candy. No, she's not ignoring the facts. She's not ignoring the truth. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, I don't like this. And then she develops strategies to deal with it until it passes. And when it passes is when her dad drops it, right? And so her dad drops the ice cube. She knows she won, and then she's able to let go and continue on with life. So that's how we've got to be. It's one of the first things we've got to do to develop this optimistic outlook for our own health and benefits in life, is that we've got to remember whatever situation you're in, it's not going to last forever, right? It's temporary. So you got to figure out situations. Well, how am I going to deal with this? What strategies am I going to use to get through this situation until God sees fit to allow it to be done and over with, and I can move on to the next thing? Right? And so also believing in the best, right? She believes she's not going to lose to her dad. she's gonna win, right? And that's the best outcome for her. She's gonna win, and she won every single time. So second thing is you got to choose to focus on the positive, right, and not the negative. So once again, it's not ignoring the reality of things, right? So as a chaplain, I end up kind of bumping into this a lot. People who go through very, very horrific situations. I remember, I didn't get to serve this patient myself, but I remember hearing the story from another chaplain of a particular patient who, she got into a really bad car accident, and when she woke up, she had no leg, right? I forget which leg it was, but one of her legs was gone. And, she couldn't even remember the accident itself, right? And so, that first couple of days, she was definitely down in the dumps. But then she started to focus on the positive, right? She didn't stay with the negative. She started focusing on the positive. And in her interaction with my colleague, she said, there's this guy that whenever I'm at the bus stop and we're waiting for the bus, he comes along and I noticed that he walks a little funny, and I realized that it's because he has an artificial limb. He's got an artificial leg. But you know what? I noticed that it doesn't stop him from doing anything. He's getting on the bus. He's going to work. He always looks happy. He's always had such a positive, going back to that positive outlook, right? That even he's never had this conversation with this patient, never had a conversation with her. But his whole general outlook, his whole general being is ministering to her in her horrible situation. She's drawn to him simply because of his positive outlook. And she remembers him. And she says, if he can do that, then you know what? When I get my artificial limb, I'm going to try and live life. I'm not going to let not having this, a leg stop me. And so she started focusing on the positive. And that's going to help to speed her recovery. Because studies show if you have a positive mindset, you actually heal faster than if you have a pessimistic mindset or you don't care at all. If you have an attitude of, oh, well, whatever, it will be what it will be, that's not going to get you anywhere faster. But if you have I'm going to heal up. These are the things that I'm going to do. I'm going to really focus in on my physical therapy. I'm going to, follow my doctor's orders. I'm going to get up each morning. I'm going to focus on what I need to do to get better. That positive mindset, focusing on what you can do, what you can control, goes an extremely long way. And so focus on the positive and not the negative. Not ignoring the negative. Just understanding, yes, these are the negatives, but this is what I'm going to focus on because this is what I can do. Third, express gratitude. Thanksgiving is a pillar of optimism. Now this is actually, in my opinion, if you don't, leave with anything else, leave with this. Gratitude has shown to be able to stave off or push away depression. Once again, referring back, I wish I could remember the name of the book, but back to this positive psychology book. The author said that he had done an experiment. He works with graduate students at a college in Oregon. And he helped the student develop an experiment where they worked with churches, two different churches, and with small groups. And they had each of the two small groups focusing on two things. Well, one thing, journaling. But one particular group, the focus was on journaling focused on gratitude, right? And then a second group was just, your typical journaling. Just talk about how your day was, whatever your thoughts are. And what they noticed over a 2-month period when testing for certain things, one of the things was anxiety and depression. Over that 2-month period, they realized that the group whose journaling was focused on gratitude had a much marked lower instances of depression and anxiety. Right? So it's not anything amazing, but just simply your focus was on gratitude. Right? It is my belief that when you are feeling hopeless, when you are feeling down, that one of the ways that you can get back that hope quickly is to start to count your blessings. Right? When you're down in the dumps, where you're feeling like your situation is helpless, when you're feeling like, God isn't here for me, nobody loves me, start thinking about things that you can be grateful for. Honestly, as a chaplain, it's probably one of the things that I mention the most to my patients when they're really, really down. Because, they're saying like, God doesn't care, or, this and that. And then I'll say, hey, how about you tell me right now, what are 3 things that you are grateful for? And it helps. And the reason I think gratitude really helps to spark that hope is because you start to realize, one, if you're a believer, that God has not left you alone, right? Like if you can find at least 3 things, and they could be simple, that, oh God, I am so grateful that, I've got my family. Or God, I'm so grateful that I woke up this morning and I've still got a job. These simple things, because they show that, hey, God is for you. God is still working in your life. God is still making a way. And so I find that if you can focus on the things that you are grateful for, you will find that you will start to feel that your hope in life is renewed. And then if you have hope, right, then you can start to develop a more optimistic mindset. And if you have a more optimistic mindset, then you can see a future for yourself, right? And if you can see a future for yourself, then that means you have a reason to live and to live well. And so that's why I believe gratitude probably is the most important thing in terms of being able to develop an optimistic outlook. And then 4th, you've got to live your vision. And so vision is just really putting your dream in action, right? Whatever dreams God has placed on your heart, whatever dreams you have for your life, you've got to put a plan in place in order to bring it to fruition. And that combination of dream and plan equals out your vision. You see, if you don't have a vision for your life, then you're just kind of living aimlessly, right? You have nothing to work towards. You have nothing that you're really looking forward to. And if you don't have any of those things, then it's very easy to kind of fall right into a pessimistic mindset. Because then what's the goal of your life, right? Like, why am I here on earth? And folks who are asking that question is because they don't have a vision. They don't feel that they have a future, right? And so, stemming from gratitude, once again, just building upon one another, you start with gratitude. The gratitude engenders hope. The hope then allows for you to start to dream. And that dream then leads to vision, and that vision then leads to purpose. And if you've got a purpose in life, you always have something to be working towards. And if you are truly a believer in God, then you know that God's got your back. In Jeremiah 29:11, we all know that one, right? For I know the plans that I have for you. Plans for a good life, plans to make you prosper. Right? If you remember the context, and I think a lot of times, we take Bible verses and we kind of make them like, motivational speeches or kind of like self-help book type stuff. But I think we need to look deeper. We need to look deeper at the context. And if you remember the context of the situation, the children of Israel at that point are no more, essentially, right? The kingdom of Israel is gone. They've been overtaken by Assyria. And you have the start of, what would end up becoming the Samaritans, right? The kingdom of Judah is left. They're on their own. And then the King Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon comes, attacks them. And then they are, some of them, not all of them at this point, where Jeremiah writes this portion of his book. Some of them are taken over to exile into Babylon. And so this letter that is sent to these exiles in Babylon, they're in this horrible situation, right? They're taken from their homeland. They seem to be in a hopeless situation because they never thought that they would ever be forced out of Jerusalem. And then God comes with this message: I know the plans that I have for you. Plans for you to prosper, plans for a future. And he doesn't stop there, right? He says to them, marry. Go get married while you're in Babylon. Who gets married if there's no future? Right? Go have some kids. Go build some gardens. Go plant some houses. Go go plant some gardens, go build some houses, right? You don't say that to people unless you truly do have a plan for their future, right? And so you've got to believe in that vision that God has given you. You've got to live for that vision. Going back to Habakkuk, write the vision and make it plain that they may run. God wants you to run with that vision that he's given you because it gives you purpose and it animates you and it gives you something to get up and go for each and every day. And so two things really come to mind as well before we go to the next slide. One is I heard a preacher preach one time, and he's president of a seminary. His name is Craig Barnes. And he said that, a lot of times Christians, we think that we're really, really special, right? That there's something that makes us inherently, like genetically almost, better than or different than everybody else. That we've got the penthouse on when it comes to on all things good kind of thing, right? And he said, well, when you look at it, there's people of other religions that are doing a lot of great things around the world too. Shoot, there's even atheists that you can find that are some of the most friendliest, loving people that you will ever meet. So he said, well, what is the thing that we have as Christians that really makes us stand out, that really makes us different? And he said he believes that the thing that should make us different and should make us stand out is gratitude. We should be the most grateful people on the face of this planet. And he said this is the reason why. And I'm paraphrasing him, of course, in all of this. He said because of the gospel. And he said, what is the gospel? The gospel is really broken down into two words, but God. You were sunken down in the depths of sin with no way to get out, but God. You were destined for eternal death, but God, right? We are the only religion that has the gospel. We are the only religion that says God came down and did for us what we cannot do for ourselves. The majority of the world's religions say that, hey, if you live a good life, God is going to recognize you. You've essentially earned your way in. Christianity says, no, you can't even do that. But in spite and despite your shortcomings and your lack of ability and power, God came in and did for you what you can't, and now you have a future. Now you have a reality to live into. And so in my work as a chaplain, I see many of these moments, these but God moments. A moment that our speaker spoke about today with that man who gave his life over to Christ, a man that you wouldn't have ever thought that he'd even do that. Why is that happening? It's but God, right? That prodigal son. It doesn't say so in the text, but we know that the Spirit must have been working on his heart, and that reunification happens. Why? But God. I see some of the saddest situations that you can come across in the hospital because of the patients that we serve, some of the most difficult, horrific cases and situations. I can't tell you the amount of children I've come across who unfortunately passed away. Children. Sometimes they get to walk out of the hospital and it's a but God moment. But you know what? For each of these situations, it is always a but God moment. Because even for the ones who die, because Christ has died and has ensured eternal life for us, there is even though he died, even though she died, but God, I will be able to see them once again. To never have to be parted from them ever again, because you have defeated death and death will be no more. But God, I want you to hold on to that. Remember that. But God. And then, lastly, we need to develop relationships with people who are going to embody and live out that mindset too. It's hard to live out and do things completely on your own. God has built us so that we can be in community, right? And so to try and have this optimistic mindset completely on your own, it doesn't really work, because we are going to hit those bumps, we are going to hit those obstacles, and we're going to need somebody to remind us, to help us, to hold our hand, to lift us up. But if you're only surrounded by pessimistic people, then they're going to drag you down. So you got to find people with an optimistic mindset as well, so that when you hit that wall, they can help to uplift you. Say, hey, brother, hey, sister, I know it's hard. I know it's rough. I know it hurts, but God. So last slide. What do you see now? Is it opportunity is nowhere? Or has this presentation convinced you enough that now you see opportunity is now here? Thank you so much for your time. I guess we can open it up now for questions.
Excuse me. One of the things that I try to learn now is that I have a lot of pain in my feet as I get older. It's been going on for excuse me, for years now. But sometimes I just think to myself, they have a saying, most of you might know it. Somebody complaining about their foot, but they met a man without no feet. So that is what I'm holding on to now. To know that there's always something, we got to try to be optimistic and hold on and know that there's something better. We can't just sit and moan all the time and carry on. And then the second thing is that I am very happy to know that I'm living in the United States of America. I must tell them that. Yes, I'm from the island of Jamaica, and I wasn't into a hut or anything. We lived pretty decent. And I immigrated to the UK, and I live over there too, and live fairly decent, poor but fairly decent, until I came here. But this is a country of opportunity, and brought my children here, and I think they did pretty good too. I give God thanks. They might not where they think they wanted to be, but I think that's where God have them right now. And it bothers me at times sometimes when some people will bash this country too, because this is the country of opportunity, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
Ingratitude, it creates in us a spirit of rebellion. When God took his people out of Egypt, out of slavery, they were not thankful, so they became rebellious. And as a Christian, I always, in the morning, always say, thank you, Lord, for every single thing in my life. Everything, even the food on the table, the house, the heat, everything. So really, yeah, even that the servant who had that talent, he had a negative view of God. He projected his negative view about God, that God was somehow harsh, and So I think really we need to develop a spirit of gratitude every single day. Otherwise, we'll have a spirit of rebellion in our lives. So.
Thank you. That's a very good point. Connecting back to what you were saying, I guess you can kind of even put that on Lucifer, right? He wasn't grateful for his particular station. He wanted more. And that led to the rebellion that we are unfortunately now in to this day, the great controversy, right? So it's a very, very good point. Any other comments or questions? All right, well, thank you so much for your time, and have a good rest of the Sabbath.